And we're live.
Live?
Live.
Live. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jason Goldsworthy.
Good morning,
Welcome
Matthew.
as a slightly later call here in Canada today, but it's back to the normal time for you in Holland, Germany.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Next week we'll be back to normal 8 a.m. Isn't that right? You've got your time change coming up in the next few days.
At last, it has been a bit, a bit of a drag with this time change, but we're now definitely back on track again with all these time changes.
But you guys are doing the time change coming up shortly,
Yeah, we're
right?
doing it. We're doing it on Sunday.
Yeah, so on Sunday, so then we're back to the normal 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. your time. So it's all good starting next week. So sorry if this threw some people off. I know some people here in Canada like to watch this while they're getting ready for work, and I imagine those very same people are probably at work today. But the rest of you, we can enjoy the live stream and they can enjoy the replay, right? So today what we're talking a little bit about is something of quite spiritual nature, really. We're talking about the opening of the third eye, right? So it's like how many, when you wake up in the morning and you rub your eyes, how many eyes do you rub? Because,
all three.
People like Jason, yeah, exactly. It's like the mediums, the yogis, they wipe three. It's like, bring them all open. Except that one's usually the easier one to open in the morning. Yeah, so we're talking about the third eye, the spiritual third eye today, and how that is something that every single one of us can open with some practice. And there's lots of different practices. I don't know about you, Jason, but everywhere I turn these days, there's something that is involved in opening the pineal gland, which is the one associated with the third eye. The pineal gland, located in the brain here, is often, throughout history, has really been connected with the third eye. The pineal gland has been connected with the third eye, and I have heard variations on that too with the pituitary gland, but we're less concerned about the physical location of it and more the actual opening of it, the spiritual opening of it. So, there's work by people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, even the Wim Hof method, right? There's a part of that where we kind of clean things up and down the spine.
Yeah, it opens up through the breathing and gets rid of the energy. So you would be opening up that part of your brain as well, Matthew. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's lots of it. There's lots of different ways that people talk about it. And there's even references in like ancient texts. Even the Bible makes reference to the third eye at times, although that's not something a lot of religions ever really followed up on at all, because that would give power back to the people, right? It's, as we open up our own connection to source, God, spirit, whatever it is we call it, it's really about opening that third eye. And that third eye, is going to bring with it. It's always there, right? But there's awareness and understanding that comes through that. It's like we can connect into the source of wisdom, the universal wisdom ourselves, right? And of course, we have to watch out for our mental filters, and I think that's a little bit about what we'll talk about. But I figured we could have a little discussion about this. We could talk about what are the things that block the opening of the third eye, what are some of the things that help with the opening of it, and there's even talk around the physical stuff. When we are talking about the pineal gland, something that limits is how our diet and the things we eat in our world and the sources of water in our life can affect it, because it can affect the calcification of the pineal gland. So maybe we'll even bring that into conversation today. Yeah. Exactly. Where do you want to start though on that one, Jason?
Well, we can start with if we're talking about like what is it, the pineal gland, and basically it's at the base of the brain. It's a gland that we all have. And it actually, when it's been activated in the right way, when you've had enough sleep, it will create enough melatonin. It creates serotonin, so it makes you feel happy and it makes you feel good. So people that are doing spiritual courses and opening up all this sort of stuff, they go away feeling, oh, I feel really happy. Yeah, that's why, because it's giving you a boost of serotonin, it's giving you a boost of the melatonin, and it's getting you, getting you up and going in your spiritual development. You can open it up by doing different ceremonies. Like if you're going to go into the dark, like if you're going to go into the dark for many days, you can open up your pineal gland more than your pineal gland.
When you say dark, you mean like like a physical dark space?
Like a physical dark space. I mean, you can just
Yeah,
if you were in the more that you are in the dark, the more that it can actually be activated more to make more hormones, to make more serotonin, all that sort of thing as well. But it opens up that spiritual side of you, and you can do it in. I think you guys call it sweat lodges. That's just spending quite a few hours in ceremony in the heat. Can also activate visions, and so the combination of
yeah.
the heat, the ceremony, and the darkness can open it up. For people that do mediumship, sitting in the power opens it up as well, because when you're sitting in the power, not just meditation, but that active power where you're opening up your senses, you're opening up your soul's energy, connecting to spirit. That connection, that ignition of energy that you can actually ignite within your body, that sparks up the third eye. It sparks up the pineal gland, and then hormones are going to start coming free. Plus, a lot of people, when sitting in the power, will feel that eventually all the energy is going through their arms, coming out of their palms. So it's a big shift of energy. And in doing that, it's like the I'd say weight training for mediums and psychics. You can do it also by what you would know very much more about, Matthew, is that yoga practice, how you can use the breath. But
Yeah, yeah.
you know about that.
Well, Kundalini Kriya Yoga is the yoga practice that I've done, and it was originally the work of Paramahansa Yogananda that definitely opened it up. And what's interesting to me, and this shows like the different approaches that can work, is that you mentioned sitting in the dark, and with the Kundalini Kriya Yoga practice that I do, they're pretty adamant that we stay in, we have to keep the room lit up for it. So it's like there's these different approaches and different things that will work, and I feel like a big part of it, people, is just trusting what you're drawn to, trusting what you feel resonance with, because there's different guidance for everybody. There's different paths for everybody with the opening of it. But yeah, the Kundalini Kriya Yoga is it's sitting in and it's focusing on breath, but there's also focusing on the prana moving up and down the spine, and it's like that whole process, everything it brings up, it helps to clear things out, in terms of gene key terminology too. The because with all the gene keys, right, it's, or anything really, it's like we're raising from the kind of the lower frequencies of the shadows up to the gift frequency, and then if the eye is fully open and somebody's fully present in that way, they're sitting in that Siddhic frequency. And it's really neat looking at some of the things that we do too, whether we're sitting in meditation or what the power or whatever practice we have to do that, is that there's also things in our daily life that we can be mindful of. Because I always remember how Yogananda taught early on that one of the things that really prevented people from opening their third eye or from connecting in even to their intuition, because that's a big part of what the third eye is guiding us with, is that intuition. And
Absolutely, the awakening, right?
exactly, yeah. Yeah, and that's what say somebody like Yogananda. That was what his whole work was here, is like awakening people, awakening the third eye, awakening through yoga, awakening through sitting in the power, mediumship, whatever you're feeling that pull and call to. And one of the things he talked about was how one of the things that really shuts it down, and I think it's something all of us can be mindful of in our day-to-day practices and day-to-day life, right? Because we're not always going to be sitting down on the mat and meditating, or sitting in the room in the power. It's like in those day-to-day when we're interacting with others, and the word that he used as the thing that shuts it down quicker than anything is gossip. When we're talking about other people when they're not around, when we're talking about situations that are really quite frivolous and superficial, right? It can tie in in terms of gene key terminology too, it becomes the opinions, right? Our opinions about other people. Where are we holding those opinions? Because if we're holding an opinion about something, we're not seeing the other side of it. And yet when that third eye is open, it's like we transcend and we can see new possibilities, right? So if you're
Exactly.
somebody who is opening up to this kind of awareness of psychic abilities or mediumship abilities. That's what Yogananda, although that wasn't the focus of Yogananda's work, it was always that that spiritual oneness, right? And that awakening
Yeah.
was that be really mindful of engaging in gossip and opinions about others and opinions about ourselves too. That can shut us down when we devalue ourselves. And so, yeah, it's all those different things throughout our day that can really help us to connect
Exactly.
in. But yeah, but as we open up, it's pretty amazing what we can experience in life. Not that it's about the experiences out there, but it's like sometimes that's what our minds need to shift a gear, right?
I like the way you mentioned that about when we're like gossiping about people outside of ourselves, or we're it's basically whenever you're worrying about something outside of yourself, you're not aware of your inner world. You're not
Yeah,
aware of your inner power. You're not aware of your inner wisdom, and all these things that once your awareness shifts to it, you shift out of your beta brain, you shift into the alpha, and that is that part of the brain that is connected to the pineal gland, the intuition, how you connect to spirit, all that sort of thing. Because once you're connected into that, and it's basically what is going on with your inner world. And if your inner world is good and what you're resonating is good, you're going to have an influence on the outer world. So you're working as a like more of a generator of energy than actually worrying about like outside of yourself and becoming a reactor to your outside world. Now,
yeah,
what I really like is what Matthew said about the different ways that you can activate it through these practices, like whether it's yoga, mediumship, sitting in the power, activating it through breathing, and like using your breath to breathe to your third eye and out. And every time breathing through it, it's something that, guys, while watching this, you can practice just your breath, just breathing out of your third eye. And you might feel tingling, you might feel energy, but when you open it up, you open up to the possibilities that you can see more things from a different perspective. Some people might feel a little bit dizzy when they're doing it. Some people might experience that they feel more clarity within their
mm-hmm.
life. And when the third
Yeah,
eye is opening, that's the first thing people notice is that clarity of vision. So then they see life in a different way. They're seeing an insight. So they're seeing a bit more of the wisdom within why life is looking the way it is. Instead of just seeing the problems, when the third eye is open, you're going to be seeing more of the bigger vision, the bigger picture of what's going on in your life and the reasons for it, the insights and the wisdom. You understand,
yeah.
don't you, Matthew?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And it's for me initially it was being around those people that were in that space that became the inspiration for that, right? And it's like when we're in that practice, when we're in that space, it's really quite fascinating what can unfold. And that clarity of vision that you talk about, I feel is a huge thing. It's like, you know, we we can either look at this world through the eyes of our ego and our conditioned mind and see things the way they are, or I feel like we can really allow spirit to see through us, right? Because really,
exactly.
it's like that's almost what it is, isn't it? It's when that third eye opening, it's almost like we're saying, hey, these two eyes of mine are seeing things a certain way from the conditioned mind. Let's open this third one and let's let spirit, great spirit, God, whatever we want to call it, to be able to see. So it's like instead of us seeing in that sense, it's almost like that it's a way for spirit to see through us and into the
Exactly.
world around us. So it can be like, okay, right, this is what's going on these days down in this part of the world, right? So it's like we become that gateway for spirit to see through, because it's like I really feel that's the simplicity of it. And what you were talking about breath there is like if we were talking about there are many different techniques, but every single one of them in some way, shape or form focuses on the breath. And there are common, like I've seen with the Wim Hof method and the
Yeah.
pineal gland activation there,
Yeah.
Dr. Joe Dispenza's pineal gland activation, and the Kriya Yoga one. There's a common thread to them all, and you kind of have to experience the processes to see that. But it is all very
Yeah.
much related to breath. And I know there's people watching this too that have had their own experiences. There's people here who have had very mystical experiences. There are people here that I've talked to in the last few days watching this who also had very connected experiences with opening the third eye. Definitely, feel free to comment below, add your contribution, or ask any questions you might have, because it really is a fascinating topic. With it's multidimensional, kind of like what happens when the third eye opens, right? It becomes multidimensional. We start to see the world in really different. That's not just a tree.
Yeah.
That's a living, breathing organism with prana flowing through it that's connecting to the world around it. And it's like, we don't see that with our limited vision.
No.
We can only see that through the opening of the third eye, right?
Opening of the third eye and being able to perceive and feel and see, that when you're seeing auras and you're seeing the energy fields around trees or whatever, when it's open and you can see that and be aware of it, you're like I said, your brain's in a different state. You're in that alpha state, and in that alpha state, that's where you're going to get inspiration. That's when you're going to be hearing wisdom. That's where you're going to be maybe hearing the whispering of wisdom from spirit, from the spirit world, from your guides, or whatever. But you get into a certain frequency through doing it. So whether you're doing the practice that we said with breathing, with the Wim Hof method, sitting in the power, or whatever, it's all activating that. There's also one where you can activate your chakras going all the way up to your third eye and then out, and in that way, using your breath, you're activating and stimulating the energy centers so that you can build up that energy for your third eye activation. And when it's open, you like I said, you can see things in a different way. The world suddenly looks a lot brighter, looks a lot nicer. Suddenly you start seeing bits of energy here and there, and it's very nice to be able to have the bigger picture instead of being, like in your narrow vision of what life is like. That's like the problems, isn't it? That everyone has, and you'd be like, this is my narrow vision at the moment. But when you actually get into a different frequency through practice, you're going to see things open up in a bigger way. You're going to see your life open up into a bigger way, and you're going to be like, oh right, I can see the bigger picture of this. I can see the greater meaning of this. I'm actually getting this, because you're not only seeing differently, but you're perceiving the world differently, receiving the information differently, and understanding it differently, and that's a good thing. The things that we mentioned about blocking your third eye and blocking that activation and awakening is, fluoride. Everything most people know about fluoride, toxins, that whether the stuff that they'll probably spray your vegetables with and stuff like that. All these different chemicals that we're putting into our bodies can toxify the body, and intoxifying your body can also calcify your pineal glands, and it can calcify the possibilities that you have. So in my house I have water. It goes through a filter. It's normal water that we get given from our area, but I still have it go through a filter, and it takes out whatever fluoride and whatever chemicals and whatever stuff is in there, so you get a purer glass of water than you can normally get. All sorts of things to be aware of. You could say go for a toothpaste that's using less fluoride, and don't react to circumstances outside of yourself like in as a reactor, but become the generator. That shift itself, you go from blocking yourself by reacting, but then when you become that inward feeling from who you are and bring it outward, that shift itself is going to be an activating way of activating your third eye, awakening you to a new consciousness, awakening you to new stuff. And what other things do you know of, Matthew? Perhaps there are things in Canada that are there some foods that you know about that block the third eye? I know you've got a lot of genetic modified foods over there, right?
Yeah, there is a lot. I mean, thankfully here on Vancouver Island, we have the highest amount of organic farms per capita. So we've got, as Jason experienced when we here, we've got access to fresh fresh vegetables, right? Everything's fresh over here. And but yeah, we do have to be mindful of that. At the same time, I think, like if we look too much into it, we can get very restricted in a lot of different ways. But there are ways to, we can bless our food too.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that, and it's like also in allowing, in just acknowledging that, letting spirit run the show. It's like it can show you things. I was blown away. I went to Salt Spring Island the other week, and there was this health food store that the community runs together. And I was looking at things like cacao and maca and spirulina and things like that. That over here on Vancouver Island, you go into a health food store, you pay $30 or $40 for the bags that they were selling there, and for there, it's completely legitimate operation, and and it was like $10 for it, $10 for a big bag of cacao, $10 for a bottle of maca, and it just in that way, it's just like, oh wow, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna let spirit, because the mind says, oh, in order to get access to these healthy foods, I've got to be loaded with money and da da da. It's like, yeah, let your spirit sort that one out, because if you try to figure it out from what you know about the world or what you think like you might be blocking access to that. And I feel in that very process, you are opening it up. And you also mentioned too, yeah, there's going to be times we are going to react to people, isn't there? People around us are going to trigger certain things in us, and we can be very mindful a lot of the times. But I don't know about you, Jason, but there's still times when I can be reactive, and I feel that in a way, then part of what helps to open up the pineal gland too, that doesn't have as much to do with breath work, and it's something that I've seen open mine up even further in recent months, is the practice of forgiveness, right? Forgiving ourselves for the times we have reacted, because I think guilt and shame and those things, those can clog up the pineal gland too, right? So it's like, what are those? When we do catch ourselves reactive, can we forgive ourselves? Can we forgive others? And I feel like that forgiveness process, it can be underrated by some of us. I know I probably didn't appreciate it, but just like I didn't appreciate the value of breath fully for most of my life. It was the appreciating that value of forgiveness too, because there's simple practices like that in every moment when somebody triggers us. It's like we can be great and mindful of around family and around certain situations, and then we go to we get cut off in traffic and we lose it for a moment, or we go to the grocery store and somebody does something, bumps into us, says something. We could be on I've heard experiences, people going on dog walks recently where they had to practice forgiveness because of other people that they weren't able to see them for their true essence. And a big part too of what happens as we open up to the third eye, is like we can literally see the clarity of spirit in the people around us, right? It's exactly. Like, it's like I can look at you as Jason Goldsworthy, or it's like I can see that actually at the level of consciousness we're all one, right? And you're an aspect of the divine as much as I am, as much as that person over there is. It's like that's another thing that comes from the opening of the third eye, and it's also the thing that can help to open the third eye when we can begin to recognize that. And growing up in Catholicism and learning that Jesus was the Son of God, and he was connected to spirit, and we would have to go to priests to connect to spirit. It was like there's that undoing process in order to open up the third eye, and that undoing and reopening, it really is very individual for each of us. Our individual path guides us certain ways.
Exactly, and I think the main thing is in this time of the world at the moment, there's a lot of people waking up. I mean, there's a lot of people waking up to a different reality. They're waking up to more spiritual nature. They're waking up more to themselves, becoming more aware of their possibilities. There's more and more open to people to learn more spiritual things and to do the aspects to it. So, like Matthew said, used to be have to go to a priest to get the great wisdom or whatever. But now people have the ability to be able to access that themselves through doing intuitive courses, mediumship courses. Some people do shamanism or healing courses or whatever, and it activates that third eye, that activates that vision, that new way of looking at the world than what we could before. So the insights that we're looking for, there's many people that are more in tune with those insights, especially when they have gone through this awakening process and they're getting in contact and waking up their abilities. They find that they're seeing the world in a whole new way. They're trusting their feelings more. They're starting to go and look out and see, hey, I'm not only trusting my feelings more, they're seeing the world in a different way. They're understanding the world in a different way, perceiving the world in a different way, and that's a really beautiful thing. And also being conscious of what you eat. I mean, a lot of people would say, okay, would I eat this food or would I eat that food? I choose it by frequency. I don't know about you, Matthew, but I'm like, does that feel right for me? And I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. That vibration of that food, because I'm sensitive, I'm like, doesn't feel right. But I might find something else and trust my feelings and say, this feels right. Like fresh vegetables, fresh stuff, anything that's fresh as possible has got more frequency in it, fresh, and the fresher the better. And with foods as well, especially, I mean, I know the Canadians love the word fresh, and I can see Matthew miming it in the background there, because everything on Vancouver Island is just the freshest, whatever you can find. But the vibrational quality of it and the vibrational value of it is, when you eat it, it helps you. It gives you more energy, and so that's how I choose my foods, and it also helps enhance the abilities and the access of what's possible, and looking at life in a new way.
Yeah. And I think that the food one is a big one for a lot of us who are awakening, right? Is every day in my work is I'm meeting people. And I was a personal trainer for 10 years too, so you meet people that they're spiritually opening up, and food can be a real area of struggle. So again, I feel it's important to practicing the self-forgiveness on that path, and sometimes having other tools too, where we can, so it's like, as we're learning to trust our intuition more, right? It's like, okay, because when it comes to food, there's so much information out there on the internet, right? It's like, it gets people confused. I know people who are just like, wait, yesterday chocolate was good for me, now chocolate's bad for me, right? It changes every day. And we're all very unique individuals. We've each got very different biogenetic makeups. We've got very different needs. Like, my physical needs are very different from my wife's physical needs. And as such, it's like there's certain foods that I react to and respond to that she doesn't. So this is where the opening of and trusting our own internal wisdom is very important. One of the things that we can do is a sort of a form of muscle testing. And there's this simple exercise that I, myself and my wife do, that with food, it's like, okay, if we hold it towards us, and it's like, okay, and it sounds hokey, but give it a go. And it's like, okay, if this is good for me, it's going to pull me forward, right? Whew, thank you. It's good for me, right? Or if it's not good for us, it's going to push us back, right? So sometimes, as you're opening up your sensitivity, maybe you're not as sensitive as Jason with it, or you're not as sensitive as other people you know. But there are ways to begin to learn to trust that intuition. I used to do muscle testing with everything. But you do start to, it's like you start, I can feel it now, right? So muscle testing, I find for a lot of people, has been a real gateway to helping them understand their own intuition much deeper. But food is a very important aspect of all of this. If we want to support the opening, it's all four things, right? It's like there's the spiritual practices, there's the physical practices with the food, there's our emotional cleansing, and there's our mental cleansing too. It's like, I don't feel like we can skip one, right?
It's all,
what do you need to look at now?
It's all needed. Well, I think you mentioned it with the blessing of our food, right? But when you're thankful for what you have, I mean, I know that I've actually measured with a pendulum what the frequency is of coffee, and when you've actually percolated and it's ready, it's got such a frequency that's so low, right? It's so low, it might give you a caffeine kick. But that coffee, it gives you a caffeine kick, but it's so low, it's unbelievable. But I've also measured what it's like when you're thankful for that coffee and you say, "Thanks
Yeah,
for, I am so thankful for this coffee." And so, in a sort of thankfulness or blessing, the frequency goes up in the coffee. And I've measured it many times, and it works. It works with food as well. I'm always thankful for what I eat, thankful for what I do, and because you're doing that for foods and things like that and products, the frequency goes up. But getting back
yeah,
to the awakening and getting back to the frequency of the vision and seeing clarity in our lives, it is
mm,
possible, and I know it is possible. I've known some mediums be able to open their third eye so much where they can get a clarity and almost a glimpse of how their life path is going to be. And it might be
yeah,
in a very strong feeling with it as well. So they'll look at the future and they'll look at their life and they'll look at where it's going and they'll just get that feeling like, yeah, this is the path for me. Just like Matthew would get the feeling of this coffee's good for me, this food's good for me, this food's
this
not
is
good.
tea.
But when you,
This is tea,
yeah,
not
yeah.
coffee.
But when yeah, tea, right. But anyway, when you when you get into that, looking at the future and you're looking at that your aspect of your life, is that good for me? I always ask, has this path got heart? Has this path got the heart? Does it feel
Yeah,
like the path of goodness, or does it feel the path of restriction? And I follow it like that. And when I look at it, and I'm because I've got an active third eye, and I'm like, this feels right, this feels good. Then that's the path for me. And every time, anyone can do this. Anyone can do this. And
yeah,
you can look at two paths. You can put two. If you want to follow your feelings, you say, look at that way. Where do I feel I want to go? Do I feel this is the right path for me? And you might even get a glimpse, just a little glimpse, and you might get a feeling saying, yes, this is it. This is the path for me. This is where I want to go.
yeah, yeah. And I got another thought from that too, and because it's something that I've seen people asking questions about too. There was it's like around the fact that there's amount of personal effort that needs to go into this. I think people have had mystical experiences where things have opened up their third eye, right? And then they don't have anything for a long time because they're not doing anything in between. And
Yeah,
I don't know about you, Jason, but I feel although as much as there's a grace to the spirit, right? It's like it's like it reflects our own personal effort with it too. If we make an effort to change our habits, to change our minds,
yeah,
to heal the emotions within inside of us, those kinds of things, it's
yeah,
almost like spirit says, hey, you done that, I'm going to make this a little bit easier for you here, right? And
yeah,
it's like it provides us with those. And also it can be in subtle ways that it opens up too. So it's like some folks may never have like that whoa mystical uh, um, experience. I think most people here that I know of anyway have shared with me how they do have them.
yeah,
But there's also this, and it can be a carryover from the religions, and a tendency for this codependency is like waiting for a savior, right? As this unconscious waiting for a savior. And it's very unconscious a lot of the
yeah,
times. And it's like that savior could be the angel or the spirit on the other side, the loved one who's gone to the other side. And it's their guides. They're guides, but I think the very word guide says it all there. It's like they're guides. They're not called do it for yous, right? So there's an amount of personal effort in that, right?
yeah. The amount of times I've heard people say, "Well, I just asked my guide whether I should do this and do that," and I'm like, "Yeah, but what about your own intuition? You've got everything that you need within inside of yourself, all the wisdom you need, all the everything's within you. Opening when you opened your third eye and you're opening up your awareness, and you're opening up you're actually getting more into the alpha brain, and you're actually experiencing life in a different way. You can make the decisions yourselves. You can feel into it. Say, this is what I need. That most of the biggest power that there is believing in yourself. And if you believe in yourself and you believe in what your feelings are telling you, or which direction you're going in, you're going to step into and you're going to ignite that energy within inside yourself, like believing in you, believing in your possibilities. If you're going to give all that energy to a guide and say, "Oh, my guide told me to do this, and my guide told me to do that," yeah, they're good inspirers, and they can inspire us very well, and that's the main thing. But the main thing is to remember personal responsibility, And the personal
Mm,
responsibility in this lifetime, you're the person in this lifetime that has to grab this life by the horns and say, this is my life. I'm going to create this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go forward within my lifetime, and I'm going to do the best that I can do. And that's something that your guide can't do for you. You make the decisions. A guide is a beautiful inspirer and can bring beautiful words and beautiful wisdom, but don't forget your own inner soul's wisdom that you've got to share, because that inner soul's wisdom is needed, and that's the reason you were born on this planet.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's no thought just went out my head. Then never mind.
I've got a
I
got a
just
question coming in,
yeah, there's a
Matthew.
question here from Dolores.
Yeah,
So Dolores says, I've heard of some people who had their third eye open very quickly with no formal training or understanding of what happens. Any thoughts on this? Better understanding on how to work with the third eye. Yeah. Yeah, because that's we kind of alluded to that, because there are people that do have their spontaneous awakenings, I feel, and it can be in many different, and people have had psychedelic experiences, but people
yeah,
have had, just walking along the street or sitting on a park bench and it happening without any preconceived, and I feel that's a big part of the cosmic joke around awakening too, is like it's given to us when we're ready for it, right? Versus when the ego mind says, I'm going to awaken tomorrow. The ego mind actually
yeah,
doesn't want us to awaken. But once we've had those experiences,
yeah.
it it's about keeping it open, right?
Exactly, and then doing the formal training, or
Hmm.
understanding it better. It sounds similar to my story. I had like a Kundalini awakening that happened to me, which I didn't know about. I had to find out through getting in touch with a good psychic and say, I don't know what's going on with me. I don't know what's happening with me, but I seem to have all this stuff. And my third eye opened up like that as well, in that way. And I was like, oh, so now what do I do? You know, no formal training. Where do I go? And then you try to discuss it with people around you. Nobody understands what you're going on about. Yeah, I'm seeing this, or I'm understanding that. I'm start to perceive life in a different way, and it
Hmm.
becomes then, when that happens in that spontaneous way, it becomes then your journey to find out, what is this.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. I had to find out that. So that's when I actually looked for the formal training. I looked for the circles. I looked for the people to get in contact with about that, and learning more about it. So the spontaneous awakenings which do happen. Yeah, I always look for people with knowledge, and I look for people with the answers, and I don't think you can read it all up in one book. But the one thing to remember, if you were like me when it happened, it was such an awakening when I just thought, oh God, what I'm going to do is remember to breathe and stay grounded, because I know I had to ground at least 3 times a day, and grounded, just physically feeling your feet on the ground, breathing, and doing and trying to continue. And this is what I had to do, which was just continue doing normal stuff. Not
Yeah.
segregating yourself from being sociable with people, but really just doing it, getting out there, doing the good stuff. Um,
Yeah.
I bet.
Because I've seen people open up before,
Yeah,
and it was like they had this sense that because they received it, that they were very special,
yeah,
and that they were here to guide others, and that they didn't explore it more deeply. There's ones who experience it and they share their genuine experience from a
yeah,
place of, oh yeah, but I have, and the yogis talk about this too. Yogananda would talk about this. My yoga master Yogi Raj Gurunath talks about it. How that there are the yogis, there are the journeyers who have those experiences, and they get a certain arrogance about them,
yeah,
right? Where
yeah,
they're like, hey, this happened to me, it didn't happen to you, and
yeah,
that can actually cause them to fall down, not fall down, but to begin to close their eyes a bit more,
yeah,
and so it feels like that having that continued training in it, or something to keep us present. And also with it's like those, the yogis also talk about those who get, and it's from Patanjali's yoga from thousands of years ago, which is kind of like a warning to those, to us, is to be really present to when, say, because what happens, like there's yoga masters that they open up, their third eye awakens and they awaken others, and they don't tell anything, they don't share and shout their mystical experiences from the mountaintops, they integrate it fully, right? Yogi Raj says something, he says, those who say it know it not, those who know it say it not.
Yeah.
Because like it's about that containment of that experience for them. Yeah. And that it's like when we, yeah, it's the other thing too, is that sometimes these abilities can open up in us, right? Like the mediumship can open up us. And I know when I attracted Patanjali's yoga into my life, it was probably at a time when I was like, "Oh, these cities are really cool." Cities is the magical powers that they talk about in the yogis, and their warning was, it's like, if you know, that's not the path. Like the path, it's like, because you can have these abilities, and if you get fixated on that one ability, it's almost like you don't get to experience the full spectrum of things. And also there's many yogi masters who walk around who never performed an outer miracle in their life. They've never done, they could all do it. They could see into somebody else's visions, see somebody else's future. They could all do that. And from their perspective, it's like, it's using that in service to spirit. So those who are using mediumship to better their own egos can actually shut down the third eye awakening, whereas those who are using it because they're in total service to spirit, right, and they're really mindful of their responses and reactions to others, they're really mindful of their, you know, jealousy of other people or their anger towards other people and things like that, and it's recognizing it, so it's having that anchor to bring them back to that awareness too.
Exactly.
Because I feel we have to be really careful with that as our third eye opens, especially in this Western world where there's so many things where it's like, you know, you've got the TV mediums and stuff like that who obviously have their abilities. It's being really mindful of, is this in service to spirit or is this feeding something else?
Well, you know, like we're talking about the opening of the third eye and the awakening and that sort of thing, and I'm like, yeah, it's an amazing thing that happens. But the thing to remember is, don't get blinded by the light, because, you know, okay, it's a beautiful ability opening up, but the first thing, when people get blinded by the light, they don't quite see the light behind the light, or they don't see the wisdom behind the light. And it's like, so anyone that's got like this spontaneous opening of the third eye and things are opening up, yeah, it's great. I'd say read up books on it, research it, and do as much research as possible, and how to understand how it works. It's practice. It's just practice and practice. And if you can find a circle, Dolores, in your area where you can practice, or people that you can practice with, or anything like that, that would be really good. Definitely reading books on it is very important, and having a knowledge about it. I think that's the main thing, because the only thing that happened to me when I got that awakening all those years ago, it was like I didn't have the knowledge, and that's what makes it a bit shaky and a bit scary. But once you get the knowledge, you're like, oh right, that's all right, this is normal, you know. So now for me, this is normal. This is my norm.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing, and better understanding how to work with it is, yeah, can you practice looking at auras? Yeah, you can do that. Can you practice using it to look to actually understand and feel into what's going on? So it's a beautiful opening to new possibilities. And yeah, the awakening, I believe, is a beautiful thing, but it can be, when it happens spontaneous, it can be quite a feeling of quite scary, like what's going on, and nobody told me this might happen. I thought I was just going to be a healer, and that was going back to my times. But yeah, whatever practice you do, whether it's yoga, whether it's mediumship, whether it's healing, whether it's following the path of shamanism or whatever, and you're opening up to these sensitivities and abilities, it's like, yeah, it's great, but try not to get blinded by the light, and try to see past that and say, okay, there's more to see. There's more possibilities. There's more to endure, and there's more wisdom to find out. And I think the main thing to remember is everyone in this world is special. There's no, I don't believe that there's certain people in this world. Oh, you're special because you've got this, and you're special. I believe everybody's special, and
Yeah.
everyone has a gift, and that gift, when you bring it together to the table, we can have a party with it. And that's the main thing to remember in this world, that everyone's got a gift. Even Matthew.
Mhm.
Matthew's got a beautiful gift, haven't you,
Even me.
Matthew?
Yeah. Yeah. Even me has got a gift in there somewhere. One day I'll find it.
I,
One day.
I reckon it's a gene key gift in combination with the contemplation gift, in combination with that yoga gift that you've got, and definitely in combination with that Wim Hof method gift that I think
Yeah.
is
Well, you know what's
awakening you.
you know what's funny is like in the gene keys, it's the pearl. The pearl is the right in the center. It's right in the heart of it, and actually within that, it's funny. You start to realize all there was no mistakes in life. All these things that you've been drawn to, the people, the experiences. There's no mistakes in any of them. And my pearl is actually stillness, the gift of stillness, and it has a lot to do with breath work. It has a lot to do with yoga, and so it's like, you know, for all the things I've accumulated intellectually throughout my life, it's actually my inner stillness that's going to bring, if I bring that awareness to that, it's like, oh wow, so all these things that I've been guided to, you can look back, and vision is 2020, right? I can
Yeah,
look back and see how these all, it does tie into those and and that was part of the reason I even found the gene keys, because my wife, she's this a medium who's just renowned across Vancouver Island for her ability to pick up information, and she's just got a constant stream of referrals. And I'm like, I felt like I was kind of stuck in this intellect and things like that. It's like, so what are my gifts? I can write, I can see that, but there's something here that was missing for me. And in the gene keys, it helped me to discover that missing piece, right? And
mm,
so it's like it helped me to see that this gift, stillness is a gift. And I started realizing the ways in which it is. And
yeah,
that comes with the awakening of the third eye and the self-knowing. We have a dog that comes and visits us, and she is high energy,
yeah,
and she will just like rip around the house. But if I just bring conscious awareness and just look and just bring in stillness,
yeah,
she responds to that, right? And it's like, oh, so you start to realize these things. It's like, yeah, maybe my gift isn't this one. Like, my wife's that stand out in the way they do, and my own gifts stand out in a different way. But until I appreciate them in myself, the rest of the world isn't going to appreciate them anyway. So,
exactly. So
our
you're the silent generator.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right, yeah, not so
which
silent, but
yeah, but you're holding space, and when you hold space in that way, it has an effect on your outside world. Now, Dolores has written back. She agrees 100% personal responsibility. She's had formal training and worked publicly for 30 years. Some of her
yeah,
students have had this experience. The advice is valuable, and exactly how she guided them to learn more. She said, "Thank you for my wisdom." Well, I said it's a bit of my wisdom, a bit of life experience, and a bit of spirit wisdom. But Dolores, it's nice to know that you had exactly the same, and you could give that exactly the same advice to your students as well. And it is so needed. And just for anyone that knows, all these videos, they get put on YouTube. So if you want to look up us on YouTube, we'll be putting up the links. You can find us on there. I think Matthew's got a YouTube channel. I've got a YouTube channel. We're putting them on there because the whole point is I didn't have this sort of information back when I had my awakening. I didn't have this information back in my day, and I thought, oh, what's going on? So it's nice to get the information out there for people. Um,
yeah,
I think we're coming to a close.
yeah. I think so.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, it's 9:55.
yeah.
Woo! Guess
Okay.
we opened up the third eye today. That went yeah. That last, and this is why I love the questions as well and the input, because it feels like since Dolores asked that question, it took us into
Yeah,
a whole new space. It's
yeah,
always, I really appreciate the interaction on these
yeah.
things. It's
Love
much
the
better doing them
interaction.
with you, Jason, though. When I do them with you, it's like, oh, there's the interaction, there's the flow there.
Yeah,
When it's I don't know about you, but when I do a live stream and it's just me talking one way, it's a very different experience. If this, you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Matthew. I know what you mean. So to all of you guys, if you want to get in contact with us, we've put some links in here. You can find Matthew on those links if you want to find out more about
Yeah,
what he does with the Gene Keys. You can find out more about me. And yeah, look us up on YouTube. We put the videos up on YouTube because we just believe that, you know, it's good to get the information out there. And thank
yeah.
you for listening, and see you next week. Same
Yay.
time. So no, I'm not sure with this time change.
Oh yeah, no, same time next week for
Europe
my
is going to
people.
be a different time, but for Canada
Yeah,
it's going to be the same time.
yeah.
Anyway,
Canada people, it's going to be 8 a.m. next week. For
all right,
European, it's isn't time a funny thing?
it is a funny thing, you know. Hey guys,
Good thing it
everyone,
doesn't exist.
thanks a lot for tuning in, and we're going to say that's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. That's the two Ronnies, isn't it? Oh boy.